Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Thursday. It is October 8th. This will be our chart lesson for today, and this is going to wrap it up for the week. No chart lessons on Fridays. I stopped doing them on Fridays a while back if you're new, so um, anyway, it's going to wrap up our week. But let's talk about the chart and the trades. It was obvious range day today. We really spent the entire day in a 10-point range. We had a little failed breakout here. And then later in the afternoon, we traded on up. Not sure what happened right in here to rocket up like that. I'm sure some kind of something news item came out, but you can see that really we spent the whole day in a 10-point range other than the breakouts. And really we spent most of the morning in a 5-point range until it was obvious this was a bigger range, and then we spent most of the afternoon in the upper half in the other 5-point range. Where you really run into problems is in the middle of this range. So once it became obvious, really past this point, that this is kind of a midline in the middle of the range, it's not real smart or productive to enter anymore in that middle part. You'll still get some entries and they'll still work, but you'll get a lot of failures too. When I'm looking around on the forum and I see people entering in the middle of the range and, they talk about a perfect second entry. Well, when you get in a range, second entries, you really only want to be interested in them if they give you a second entry long off the lows or a second entry short off the highs. In the middle is where you'll get chopped to pieces, and you just don't know what's going to happen there. It's just too easy to get chopped up, and so you're better off. Don't try to trade second entries or trade failures in the middle of the range. Um, Only trade them if they're at the support or the resistance areas, and you'll be a lot better off. So, but you can clearly see we traded up into this, so the bias is a little bit up, although we end up getting, well, we probably got an equal number of long and shorts. But you can see once we failed out the low side, and then once we had a successful move forward, it was out the upside, and that's pretty typical. When you trade up into a range, it tends to have a little bit of an upward bias. But by the time you've been going sideways this long, you're just trading a range. You don't really have much of a bias anymore. So anyway, let's back out, go through the trades, and wrap up our week. There's not a lot of them again today. Shouldn't take too long. Um, Early on, we had this trend working up. You draw that off the first two swings. When it comes back here, it confirms it. 7 o'clock came right after this bounce right here, right in here. And so this is just shortly after 7 o'clock. Right here, you get a higher low. That's a great place to enter right off the key entry point. If you catch that one trade, you got a nice trade right out of the gate. You get a higher low right here that bounces off of this off the EMA. I marked it green because it's a huge bar. Oops, didn't mean to do that. This bar is 16 points, so that's a $225 risk trade to take that trade, and you're going long pretty close to a double top basically there. It's a failed second entry short though. It's it still works, but you could have you could have easily gotten stopped out because notice it comes back and it does make a lower low, and so it's just a little bit aggressive. But when it comes back here, you get a second entry long. Notice that high first entry, second entry, and you get a little double bottom here, and you get that little move lower that turns back up. You can tell that's probably going to trap people. It didn't really act like it trapped a lot of people, but it still worked. Um, there's a higher low here, but that close to that resistance across there that you can clearly see now, just stay out of that. You don't really want to go short yet, but you don't want to go long. Then you're just kind of working down, and I believe this is one of the longs that somebody asked about, but you can clearly see, even though we break higher, and that's technically a second entry by the count, that bar is not great either. It closes below the EMA. It is bouncing off the trend line or the key entry point, but you can clearly see that's one leg down. And then you get a move up, and then you get your next leg down. So your true second entry is right there. That's the place to enter. And I meant to mark that one at least green right there because it's at the key entry point. It's a fairly bullish bar. It's not perfect, but it's still bullish enough. And the other problem is you're still in this little trend down, but it is a key entry point that's been tested multiple times and it's held every time. And we are bouncing off the same lows here. Really, you would have had it drawn across here at that point. And so that's strong support. So that's a good place to go long. It's close to being blue. The only reason I made it green is because you're still in this little small channel, and there's a good chance it could break higher and turn down one more time. But it doesn't. It just rockets on up, comes back, and you get a first entry long there, and then you get a second entry long right here. Had a little interruption there. I'm sorry. I'm not sure which way this broke first. Technically, I wouldn't want to enter until it broke lower and then turned up there because it's a little congestive. You could almost argue for this to be green. It's really real close. But this one was an inside bar, so you don't want to enter on it for sure. And you can see the congestion, but when it breaks lower and turns back up, you could go long above that bar right there. So it's real close. You could make it green or blue. I originally made it blue, but I went back and forth about whether it should be green or not. We'll just leave it blue. But you had to wait on this bar. You couldn't enter on this one because it's an inside bar. And at that point, you still got a lot of congestion here. But the reason is because of the support. We tried to go lower multiple times and failed. And really, you could argue that's a you made this low and then you come back once, you come back twice. You could argue that's a double test too. So it's a quick, easy scalp. You don't get much more, and it comes back again. And if you'd had a decent signal bar here again, you probably could have gone long again. But that bar is almost too neutral. So, and you don't want to go short right here, right into the lows, even though it would have worked. You don't want to go short there. And there's actually a second entry here, but notice you come down, you go first entry, and then when it breaks higher, there's a second entry. But that's an inside bar. That's another one. With that failed break lower, you're probably going to go higher. It is a second entry. It is at the support. It is a failed breakout, most likely. It's going to act like one. So, and you can see how it took off right there. So, as much as I hate to mark that inside bar, that's a possibility. But I'm definitely going to make it green, because it's a little bit aggressive, but it's one of those that it's one of those trades when you get those failed breakouts, they often make important lows. And you can see if you caught that one trade, that's probably all you needed today. I mean, that's a 10 or 11 point move right there. 324 area to the 334 area. And of course, you might have exited right here when it started finding resistance right on the top side of that. But even then, you get 6 or 7 points out of it. So you don't get a chance to go short, and then you bounce. There's a higher low here, but very weak bar right into the EMA, and then you're just in this congestion again. But you do make a double top here, and this is a little lower high with a nice bearish bar, and you got room to get out. There's basically another little, well, actually, this just kind of extends on here, and you can see that, hopefully. So you got plenty of room back, and then you get another low here. That bar is not quite bullish enough, but you're making higher lows here each time, and there's a double test right there, and that does make equal lows. So that's another one that you could argue really to be green. There's a bunch of green ones in here. I tried not to mark them, but again, you can see that's an important low. Look at it go. At this point now, it's pretty obvious if we keep turning down up here, we've probably got a bigger range. And you make a high there, you make a lower high with a nice signal bar, and that is a second entry short if you're counting first entry, second entry. So I like going plenty of room back to the EMA, even plenty of room back to the trend line, although, this trend line is probably a little steeper It's probably going to be more like this right here. So I originally drew it a little flatter, but you can tell that's, and we did have a measured, we pretty much had almost a perfect measured move by the time you got the correction there. But you would expect prices to come back to the EMA right here. And then you run up. And again, that's one of those failed breakouts that you may take. In this case, I'd want to wait on a lower high because you might get 2 legs up. And unfortunately, you don't get one. And then now you're in the middle here. This is another second entry long, but we haven't tested that and proved that it would hold enough. It's all below the EMA. It's all congestion. Just skip that. Even though it works, you just got to skip that. If you got a higher low set up here, you might take that back into the highs, but you don't get it. But you get your break and a new high, and technically that's 2 legs up, and you make a lower high. So I like, that's a second entry short at the key entry point. I like going short there. And then you get another opportunity here. The problem is it's a huge bar. I don't know which way it broke first. If it broke higher, I'm assuming it broke higher when it bounced off the EMA and then turned down. If it did, you could go short right there, 1 tick below that. Whenever you enter like that, your safety stop has to go above the last swing high, which would be here until this bar closes. Then you can move it over here. But the problem is, let's just assume this, that it broke higher first and it only went a tick or two, and then it turned down and broke lower and then turned back up and traded a little higher. You don't know where to have your stop there because there's no set, until this bar closes, there's no set swing there. So your stop has to go above that one, your safety stop. So keep that in mind. If you waited till this bar closed, you can't go short there. Just skip this trade. The only way you could do it is if you got a chance to get in 1 tick below this bar right here when it was engulfing it. And that's pretty much a double top, then a first entry, second entry. So that's a failed second entry long, but again, you're right in the middle in this congestion. It turns out to be a great trade, but you just can't risk that. You're better off to wait and see what happens. And this is another one of those failed break lowers. Look how far away you are from the EMA. And this actually went lower and turned and went higher. You could still go long 1 tick above that bar. I made it green because it's aggressive. But I'm just going to tell you, these are great opportunities to catch these lows, and they're almost worth the risking, even on this big bar. Because look at the move you catch. That's a huge move right there. And of course we pull back and we kind of get congestive here again, but all it is prices are trying to go lower and they can't, and you get a little trap right there. There's actually a failed second entry short that you could have taken here. I didn't mark it, but you could have gone long right there. It would have still worked. Your stop would be down here. But I think you're better off to skip that. But when it breaks lower again and turns up, if we break above that bar, and this bar is real close to not being bullish enough, but it's probably going to act like a trap, and if it breaks higher, it's probably going to rock it up, and that's exactly what happens. And it runs up real fast. And so I like that trade. You have to understand why it's congestive right there, because it's stuck between the EMA and this support across here. And of course the support just moved down a little bit. That's all it was. You can see it right there. And I actually moved them both down when I did that. Well, I didn't mean to do that either. All right, well, anyway, your line should be right below there now, and off it goes. And again, congestion, just stay out of that. You don't know what it's going to do. We're probably headed up here, but it might fail out a couple of times each way before it gets up there. And you make the new high, then you make a lower high. Bar's just not bullish. It's too bullish, or too neutral really, and you miss that trade. Then you come back and you make a little triple test here, and you got room back to the midline here. Notice you made that high. You test it once, you test it twice. Nice bearish bar. It's a little bit of an inside bar, but the bar they're matching. I made it green. It's still a little aggressive, but you're still going short off on a lower high off the highs. And really it's that triple test there with enough room back to the midline. If this was right down here into this, no, you couldn't go short, but there's plenty of room there. It actually goes further. Of course, then we bounce, but you don't want to be going long there, right in the middle. It would have worked, but you just don't want to go long there. Of course, now we get the breakout. You make a new high, first entry, second entry, and that confirms that trend line. So second entry long at the key entry point, and you got enough room back to the resistance in case it holds, because it could hold and turn prices back down. But it doesn't. The trend line turns out to be the right play, and off we go to the high side. There's a higher low here, but not a very good signal bar. Actually, we're into the 2 o'clock hour here. I meant to just mention that I marked this one because it's only like a minute or two. You can see that was at 202. So a really good setup like that at 202 you'd probably take, but after that I wouldn't take anything else. It's well after 2 o'clock. So that's what I saw today. A lot of green ones in there, and I probably you could have argued to make a few of the other ones green too, but there's plenty of trades there. So anyway, hope that was helpful to you today. Hope you had a good trading day. I hope you've had a good week. I'm gonna wrap it up, and we'll wrap this week up. And we'll be back again Monday. Anyway, I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next.